Hello everyone, I believe we're live, but I'm going to let it sit for a second. I decided to start the stream a couple minutes early to have it available when it was actually 7 o'clock for people. So I will give it a few minutes to see if, a few seconds or so to see if anyone the chat, but then we will get started. Just on a side note, it seems that YouTube might be having a little trouble with streaming today, so if it's cutting in and out, I don't think it's on my end, but I will try to keep the stream up as well as possible. Alright, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So, much like my first few larger streams, I'm going to talk a little bit about the AI and the improvements to the projects I've been working on, and then I will move into my main topics, which for today's stream will be SOAP and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then from there, I will move on to my usual end of stream activity with the random words, and I will be drawing whatever comes up in Paint for your viewing entertainment. So, like I said, I have been working on my my new project that I talked about on Wednesday. I haven't made much progress in the terms of what is actually the AI's intelligence, but in terms of the task that the AI will be performing and attempting to optimize, I have written the majority or a version of that task so that it could be played by a user instead of the AI, simply for testing purposes. But I'm going to hold out on showing that to you because I believe on Wednesday I'm going to try and get a guest on the show to play the game with no instructions, just like the AI would be taking in all the information without any instructions, and just to see how well the person will do. I'm not sure who that person will be, but it will have to be a surprise on Wednesday. With that being said, I would like to talk a little bit about the general ideas that I've been tossing around for the AI and the intelligence part of it. So the structure of the problem with the new task that I'm trying to have the AI optimize is that it requires the game, just like how you can see the game with the ball dropping here, it requires the game to be running constantly. It can't have the game stop and then start back up with new traits. So it requires me to create a higher program from the parent program, which I think I'm going to call the boss program, just because it's telling the parent program what to do, and that kind of made sense in terms of comparison to society. So the boss program will be giving orders to the parent program to tell it what situation to learn about, and then when the parent program learns about that situation and provides a best program or a best set of data for the traits in order for the AI to use, then the boss program will give those traits to a third party as in like another program, but not necessarily higher up than the boss, but a program that is driving the game. So what's going to happen is there will be the game running constantly, and the driver program will be running the game and using the decisions that the boss program is feeding to it based off of the situations that the parent program has learned about by creating child programs. And that may sound a little complicated, but I can attempt to draw something here for a flowchart. So there's the boss program, and that's the boss program. And so there's two sub programs under here. So there's the driver program, which we'll say is a rectangle, and the parent program, which we'll say is a triangle. So the boss program, and the boss program tells the parent program what it needs to try and learn about. So it feeds in a situation or environmental factors that the parent program takes in and starts looking at to find the best decisions that can be made in those in that environment. And then the way it does that is by going to a child program, which I don't know, we'll do star or something because it's somewhat like a triangle. So it creates child programs, and then the child programs test the changes and the ideas of the parent program and give feedback back to the parent program. And then once the parent program has an idea of what a good decision would be in that situation that the boss program has fed to it, it then says this is the best thing we can do and sends that back to the boss. So the whole time the boss is also feeding information to the driver, and this information is the decisions that the parent program has given to the boss program. But then the driver program has the score running. So the driver program says that it could say that, like, so the point of an AI is to get something to where the score goes higher, or the point of this type of AI. And what's different about this structure as opposed to the current structure is that in the current structure, what you'll see on the ball drop program, the score goes up, and it can only go up. Well, so it can only go up. Theoretically, it could go down if I had a different task that was having it to where there was repercussions for doing something. But the score is just a total. And the difference with this program that I'm discussing is that the score is a rate. So it's not the total, it's how well it's doing at any point in time, instead of just constantly going up in score or occasionally going down. So the driver will be feeding in the scores, and also the parent program will be using these scores when it tests the situations. But the driver is trying to put itself in a situation that has the highest score based off of the decisions that are made from the information provided by the parent program. So that's the general idea. So the driver can also talk back with the boss, and then all of them communicate in order to optimize the program. Now, the one thing that I'm worried about is when I do perfect, or not necessarily perfect, but get a practical working program for this, or a practical working set of programs for this, it will be difficult for just my computer to run this. So I'm hoping that in the future I will be able to upgrade with my hardware a little bit, but the idea is what I'm working on right now. So like I said, I do have the task all coded out so that it could be played by a human, a person, just sitting at the computer, and I will be showing that to you guys on Wednesday. But for now, I believe that is the update on that is all I wanted to mention on the AI. So given that I don't see any comments in any questions in the chat, I'm going to play a short ad here and then move into my first topic, which is soap. But what I would like to mention before I move into the ad is that I had a couple ideas and I wanted to see what you guys thought about them. So I'm thinking about, well, so you guys have heard me play a couple instruments just randomly in intermissions and whatnot, but I'm wondering if you guys would like to hear some music instead of a topic one day or something like that. I'm more than willing to play a couple songs. The one thing is that I'm going to try to pick things that I at least have put my own spin on, because then there's less of a deal with copyrights and whatnot. But I just wanted to throw that idea out there to see if you guys had any input on it. But with that being said, I will play a short ad and move into my first topic. So I'll be right back. Alright, I believe we are back, and if we are not, then I know that it is still recording on YouTube, but I will move into my first topic, which is soap. And when I say that, I understand that talking about soap might not come across as the most interesting thing, but I hope to prove you wrong on that. So what I want to first point out, what I want to first talk about is, so the point of soap is to clean things. So if we're thinking about dish soap specifically, so you have a dish and it has something stuck on it, and you use soap to get that food that's stuck on the plate off the plate and down the drain. So what first needs to be explained is how dissolving works. So the one thing is that in chemistry and in other topics as well, water is called the universal solvent. And the reason it is called the universal solvent is because in most situations, if you pour water on something, it will start to dissolve it and absorb it into its structure. So what happens is, because water has this shape, this polar shape, where it has 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen, then the molecule will be attracted to other polar molecules that tend to be in food particles. So if you have another molecule that's a little lopsided, and this isn't the same kind of picture, this is just a description, because I'm just saying it's a dipole, which means that one side is positive and one side is negative. So what happens is, when you have a molecule that is lopsided, then the water molecules will align around it and sort of grab hold of the dipole molecule inside the water, so that when it is dissolved in the water, you can't tell that the water and the other molecules are two different things. So how this applies to soap is because soap has a similar structure to water, but it has a little bit more of a sophisticated chemical structure. So I'm just going to clear the board here. So the shape of a soap molecule is a polar head. So this is a dipole in a sense, and then a tail that is nonpolar or hydrophobic. So what happens is that when you have your water molecules up here, then the water molecules will be attracted to this polar head of the soap molecule, and then so the soap itself dissolves into the water. But what happens with this hydrophobic tail over here is that now that the soap has a nonpolar part to itself, it can dissolve other particles that are nonpolar. So if there's a over here, then the soap can be attracted to this and grab onto it, similarly to how the water is attracted to similarly to how the water grabs onto the polar head of the soap particle. So an interesting thing is that in nature, when you have a bunch of particles in a liquid or even in a solid, it just takes a little longer. What happens is that there are certain structures that the molecules tend to fall into based off of how many of them how many of them are in one area, and what types of energies they're working with. So nature always wants to go to the most efficient design of a structure or lattice, or I guess in water, in a liquid it necessarily isn't a lattice, but so what happens is when there's just a few soap molecules per food particle, then you get your food particle, and then the soap particles will tend to circle this food particle and point their tails in, assuming that this food particle is nonpolar, and that's the reason why you need soap. If not, then the water would just handle it. But so they circle this food particle and form a sort of cage that dissolves the food particle within the soap so that it can be washed away. And what happens when you add more soap and more soap is that these circles become more dense with soap, because all of the soap particles are attracted to all of the nonpolar food particles. So there gets to a point where no more soap particles can get in on this caging of the food particles. So then it's no longer efficient because it's not using all of the soap particles. And what happens is that when you have too much soap, it tends to fall into a different structure that is not circular but more linear, and you'll see it kind of looks like a flattened out DNA kind of shape. So the soap lines up like this, and then there's also the ones on the bottom, and you can imagine this as going also rotating around out of the screen and into the screen into like a cylinder shape. But what happens is all the food particles are stuck in here, and yes, it still dissolves the food particles, but the problem is this is not the most efficient structure because you're wasting all of these particles. You don't need all of these particles. You only need a few per food particle. So what tends to happen if you use too much soap is that it becomes inefficient, and so it's actually better to find a good ratio of soap to food that you need to dissolve, or soap to anything in general. I mean, if you're talking about something on your hands, it follows the same principles. But this is the general idea and the chemical structure. This isn't too in-depth, but I have listed a source that if you are a little more interested in finding out more about this, I've listed a source in the description, so you can check that out on your own. But that being said, I believe that is all I wanted to talk about on this topic, and I'm not seeing any new questions in the chat, so I'll just play another short ad, and then I'll move into my third topic, or my second discussion topic, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I will be right back with that. Okay, I believe we're back, and I've received a couple notifications that the stream may have cut out a little bit in the start, so if any of the information was missed by that, I will be going over the project I've been working on in depth on Wednesday, so you can tune in on Wednesday. But I'm hoping that the recording on YouTube will have received all of the information, even if the stream didn't necessarily get it. So I'll be, as usual, cutting up this stream video into highlight videos, as well as posting the entire stream. So if you want to go back on the page after this and watch that, you are more than welcome to. But I will be moving into my next topic. So, like I said, that topic is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I'll start off by giving a little background. So Maslow is well known in the psychological community, and so what most people know him for is his hierarchy of needs. And what I mean by a hierarchy of needs is basically that at any point in time, there's a subset of desires and needs that a human or an organism, but mainly pertaining to humans in what I'm talking about at the moment, there is a subset of desires that is the focus of at least the subconscious level of thought. So what happens is that at any point in time, based off of environmental factors, based off of medical factors, the mind will align with desiring something in this subset. So that may seem a little out there, but I'm going to explain in depth more. So what happens is Maslow decided to define these subsets. And and with anything in psychology, there isn't necessarily an exactness to this. There's a little bit of give here and there, and it's also open to personal interpretation, because as it is said by many people, that everyone experiences aspects of life in their own view, so it's hard to apply an exact science to an individual, because there's always that factor of randomness and there's always the human unpredictability. But what Maslow tried to do, and did fairly successfully because of how long his ideas have been in practice, he attempted to define a generalized subset of desires and needs for different situations. And he also found that these desires and needs sort of stack on top of each other, as in you need to fulfill certain desires before you can move on to desiring something else. So what happens is it forms his design and his overall structure for these subsets of desires is normally depicted as a pyramid or a triangle. So this triangle is broken up into 5 sections. So I will just quickly draw that out. There's 4, there's 5. So the idea of building a triangle is that the levels below a level are prerequisites for the levels above. So this first level here, this one, is what people like to call physiological needs. So, or physiological desires. A lot of people call them needs because the official title is usually Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so it's easier to just say needs. I'll try and stay consistent with that. So this level is the physiological needs. And what I mean by physiological needs is that this level is something that the human body physically needs to live in general. So these are food, water, air, and in some cases people will put sex and other tendencies into this category. So the reason that this is the baseline and this is the prerequisite for all desires is because if you think about it, if, let's say with the breathing aspect, if someone were drowning, you wouldn't necessarily think of them to have an existential crisis or to be trying to make friends. This person is just trying to get air, and in most cases when a person is drowning, the actual conscious thought will be ruled out by the subconscious instinct to breathe. So what happens is when people try and hold their breath underwater, the human body will actually force itself to attempt to breathe even if it's still underwater, just in a last-ditch effort. And it's similar to how people who are starving will become more and more desperate to find food. So and similarly with water. So this need is something that everyone in the entire world can relate, because this is the baseline of desire for a human organism, and for a lot of or actually for any organism necessarily. It's just harder to apply these topics to the more instinctual organisms. But the next level, so here, is safety. And so why this is safety is, or what I mean by safety is shelter and possibly emotional security. So this is something where you can find that a lot of homeless will have trouble with this and will be stuck in this category because they don't have that shelter and that security to ease their mind. So what happens is people in this case tend to be distracted and have a hard time making more non-emotionally driven decisions because they are so focused on the fact that they don't have this security and this feeling of safety. So like I said, even before you get to this level, you need to have food and water and whatnot. But then once you have food and water, then that's when you start looking for shelter. So a lot of these things can boil down to the order of how you would do things on a deserted island. So let's say you're stranded on an island. First you look for food and water, and then assuming that you're already hungry. So let's say you start out and you're running out of food already. So the baseline is you need food and water, because you need food and water to survive. But then once you have that, you can start building a shelter, and once you have a shelter, you can have the peace of mind to make more cognitive decisions and move on to higher thought. So after this level is the social level, and it's not always called the social level. I just find it's easier to generalize it as social activities, but that is a little bit of a gray area. So this social level is where the necessity for family and friends and possibly and loved ones comes in. So what happens is, and you can see this happen a little bit in the idea of, well, let's go with the idea of the deserted island. So maybe if you think about the movie Castaway, then Tom Hanks' character doesn't have anyone with him on the island, so he starts to become socially attached to Wilson, the volleyball, and this is to fulfill this social need for a feeling of love and a feeling of kinship. So, but the thing is, when he had already found shelter and had a source of food, so that's why he was able to start desiring this social attachment. And so the next level is normally labeled the esteem level. So but what I mean by esteem, it's not necessarily being like self-centered or anything. It's loving oneself and having respect for others, but also being respected by others. So it's when you desire to be held highly in the eyes of others as well as in your own eyes. So this is when people may attempt to maybe work out a little bit or something, just so that they feel more comfortable with the body they have, or possibly taking up jobs or something just to get that level of respect from the society. And actually, just on a side note, I wanted to point out the AI is actually making some very smart decisions right now. It's flattening out and going and chasing the next ball pretty profoundly. I just wanted to point that out because it's at this level it's starting to get a little more intelligent. But back to what I was saying. So it's, like I said, it's not necessarily like an ego for a sense. It's just being accepting yourself for who you are, and also and getting to a point where you can accept yourself. So maybe if someone were to reach this level, but they had a bad past of different drugs and whatnot, then they may attempt to better themselves to gain the respect of others and to gain the respect of themselves. So this is an important level, but it is difficult to get to, and it is where a lot of people get stuck in as well, because the next level is very difficult to get to, and it is also possible for a strange event to happen that would throw you back down the triangle to one of these lower levels here. But the last and the peak of the pyramid, the last subset of desires here is self-actualization, and this is a very commonly used title for this category. But self-actualization is when you reach a state of understanding, and you are in such a peace of mind that you're able to develop unbiased morals and creatively think. So this is where, when we think of perhaps a monk or someone who finds this state of bliss and can begin to creatively think and experience the world, this is this self-actualization section. Now, this isn't restricted to monks and people who meditate. This is a category that anyone can achieve if they can satisfy their desires in these other categories. So I will go back and I will just summarize. So the bottom level and the baseline level is physiological needs, which is food, water, and breathing, sex, and whatnot. What your body needs, and or at least thinks it needs to survive. Then the second tier is the safety category. So this is where a person will attempt to find shelter and security. Now, this shelter can be physical, it can be a structure, it can be a house, or it could be an emotional shelter. So it could be something necessarily like an attachment to something that brings you security. We see that with a lot of kids, like needing a specific toy or a specific like blanket or something to make them feel secure in their environment. And so the third tier is the social tier, and that's the tier of this is the point where people will begin to desire to have family, to have kinship, to have friends, and to be loved by others. And so it's a feeling of belonging. So you want to be surrounded by people who will maybe pay attention to you, but also acknowledge you for who you are. And then the tier above that is esteem, which is respect for yourself and respect for others, so where people look up to you. And the way that correlates is that when people look up to you, you tend to view yourself in a higher manner as well. So this is love for oneself. And the final tier is self-actualization, which is unbiased judgment and morals and creative thought. So that is the general overview of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I will do a quick check to see if there are any questions. I'm not seeing any. If there are any questions in any of my sections, you're welcome to bring them up at the end. I will pause or if you just post them in the chat at any point in time, at the end I will go back and look to see if anyone has had any questions, and I'll attempt to answer those questions. But seeing as there are no questions at the moment, I will play a final ad, and then we'll move into the last topic, which is the random word generator description. So, alright, I'll be right back. Okay, I believe we're back. So, like I said, we will be doing the, I will be continuing this section where I pick out random words using a random number generator on my calculator, and I will attempt to explain whatever picture is described by those words. So, I will start it off by getting the first word, which is the first number, which is 19. So the noun is a water bottle. The next number is 8. So the verb is protect, and the third number is 7, and the adjective is small. So it is a small water bottle that protects. So if we have a small water bottle, then we need some comparison. So let's say that this is the scale we're working with. So if we have the Washington Monument, and then we put the bottle next to it, the bottle will be about this big. I'm not sure if you can see that, but that's the point. So then if we have, let's say, a loaf of bread, which is the normal 20 questions description of size, then it must be smaller than this. So we will assume that this is perhaps a 12-liter bottle, and it is not a liquor flask as it may look. I will put a wrapper on here to make it look more like a water bottle, but that is what we are working with. But if a small water bottle were to protect, then there's many ways a water bottle can protect things. So perhaps we'll get a zoomed in picture here. So we'll get a big view of this water bottle here, and so I will go ahead and draw that, and I gotta get the cap, and then just finish it off, and we'll get the wrapper here, and bear with me, this is not the most efficient process of drawing, but it is very entertaining even for me on this side, so I continue to do so. So there are many ways a water bottle could protect something. So let's say there's let's think of something that the water bottle might be protecting. So perhaps a small insect. If it's a small bottle, it has to be protecting something even smaller. So let's say there's a beetle. So the water bottle could protect this beetle by, or it could be a segmented beetle or an ant, because for some reason I'm drawing more than one segment, which is not the definition of a beetle, but we'll go with an ant because I've already drawn that. So the water bottle can protect this ant. That it just has a fifth leg, another leg if you want it. The water bottle can protect this ant by encapsulating the ant. So if the ant is on the inside, then it can protect the ant. But what we will find is that the ant will suffocate if there is not a hole in the top. So we will put a hole in the top there so the ant can breathe. And the way that an ant would survive in a water bottle, we would have to assume that the water bottle does not have water in it, which is a hard assumption, but I want you to bear with me because ants cannot swim very well unless they are the weird ones that build bridges, and that scares me. But so if it's protecting an ant, then by itself a water bottle isn't necessarily the best protection, but we can assume that if this is a very valiant water bottle, perhaps it has a shield here, and so we'll go ahead and give it a kite shield, because according to RuneScape that is more protection than the normal shield. And we'll give it a little detail as we go. But in order to get a little more protection for this ant, because water bottles are relatively easy to puncture with any type of projectile, especially if they are not full of water, and especially if there is a hole in the top, because this relieves the pressure of the water bottle, so there is less force going out. So this is it's a small force, so we'll give it a tiny f. So it has less force coming out of the bottle due to the air pressure pushing on the walls of the water bottle. Because of this hole, there is a break in the pressure, so the pressure is not constant, or is not the volume of air inside of the bottle is not constant. So that is why I do believe the water bottle would require some outside help in protecting this ant. I'm gonna go ahead and undo that and redo it because that was terrible. And then also some may say the best defense is a good offense. So we'll just load up a cannon here to just in case there's any enemies running up hills or something. But you have to remember this is all scaled up, so this is a relatively small cannon, but I think that if anything we're attempting to attack our ant friend here, then this cannon would get the job done. That is not what you think. It is a cannon. So I will color it in a little bit more so that it doesn't look like what you're thinking. And I will add more wheels in the background so that it looks even less like that. So we're going to get a darker brown, because if things are in the background, they are darker. So this cannon has a fuse on it, and then we'll assume that this water bottle is taking preemptive precautions, so it has pre-lit this fuse, and it is waiting for the cannon to fire at its enemies. So, unless I see any more questions about why this bottle would be protecting anything, I think this is a complete picture, but I will be open to any questions. I'll give it a little bit of time to see if any questions come up in the chat. But in the meantime, I'm just going to watch this AI for a bit to see, because like I said, it has shown significant progress since the beginning of these streams, and I have seen this program run out before, but because of the randomness of the way the AI learns, there is no telling what it will learn to do on this go, as opposed to the last go. So what I found interesting in what I saw today is that it was actually using both ends of the string to move left and right, which is faster when it attempts to do that, because what happens is when one end of the string goes up, like you can see right there, when one end of the string goes up and one end of the string goes to the side, then you get a vector addition of the side and up vectors, which is an angled direction and is less than the combination of both of them. But if both are going in one direction, then it is an additive situation. So these ends of the string can work together to move as fast as they can towards the red dot here falling. So that is a very intelligent trait, and I am quite impressed that in only, 24 generations, something like this has arisen from the AI. But like I said, I have seen this run out before, and I know that this particular task was learned relatively quickly, but it still baffles me when the AI can pull a trait out like that. But that being said, I do not see any questions in the chat, and we are getting relatively close to an hour here, so I think I'm going to wrap up the stream. But like I said, on Wednesday I hope to show off the new project I've been working on. I put in probably 10 hours in the past few days, maybe more than that, just cranking out this game for the AI to run, and actually at the moment for just a player to play. But I hope to be able to show that to you on Wednesday, and I will show it to you no matter what, but whether or not I have someone on the stream with me to attempt to play the game, I'm not sure. So the idea is that I'm going to have the person come into the game completely blind, so no ideas, and that's part of the reason that I'm not telling you guys anything about it at the moment. So they'll come into the game completely blind with no ideas about the controls or anything, because that is a good representation of what the AI has to work with in the beginning. That was interesting. It actually paused under the ball and caught it. I like this. This is the thing I love about working with AI, is just it learns. It surprises me with how it handles situations. But like I was saying, if I get a person on, then they won't have any prior knowledge going into the game on how to play it. So all they will know is that they were supposed to get the score to be as high as possible, and they will have to base their decisions off of that. So I will, with everything seeming to wrap up, I will be ending the stream here. But I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Possibly leave a like, come subscribe, and also I've been putting the stream times on Twitter, so if you're not following my Twitter already, then you might want to get in on that, so that you're not missing any of the stream or having to jump in later, because it is better, at least from my perspective, if people can get in on the live stream, so that I can answer their questions right then and there instead of later in the comments. But I will work with what I have, so I'll be signing off. So thank you for watching.